But it is time for Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave and an absent, flying in the air, travelling Mecky. Unfortunately, the service in which he travels on does not allow for internet streaming, which is a bit of a shame. Can't someone fix that technology so he can do his show from wherever he is? But we're on WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, which is actually revolution.radio. Go there, it's a URL, you can get there. And we want to see you in the chat room while we're in the chat room, because we're on air and we can see it, and you can talk to us while we're in the chat room, while we're on air. But this is more than just radio, so jump into the chat room. You need to. And do it if you can. This is show number 320. 020 and 300, Mecky would say. I've got a little pause for Mecky in my show intro. It's on air, talking about the radio. If it was Mecky, he's in the air. It's online also, and unlike Mecky, and it's on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. You know, one day I'd like to present Grace, the company, with all of our promos that have run. This is in the 7th year now. So can we please have one? Please? Send me one. I'd like to know. I know they exist, and I know that you can get Revolution Radio on it. So that's pretty cool. Do you know what? If you missed Solaris' show, she actually is having a bit of a break, a holiday. And Dr. Rowe had a guest on, the Hijacker. I haven't heard Hijacker's voice in so long. Good on you, buddy. I'm glad you're alive and well, and I hadn't heard from you for a long time. Or you've just been on, presenting yourself on other shows that I haven't, because of the time zone difference. But I'm glad you're up and awake, and you're a good part of the contribution towards Freedom Slips. Do you know, if you're listening to this on YouTube, I want to remind you that you can listen to Solaris' show and all the other host shows for that matter for only $5.95 a month. It's in Australia, that's like not a super large or a grande. It's the largest coffee cost to the largest coffee that you would buy at somewhere in the city. And that's all it costs, is like a coffee a month. It's not very much, and it's well worth it. I do. Even though Hawk was nice enough to say, Dave, you guys, you don't have to do that. You're already contributing content, so you don't have to. I said, but I want to. And my motto is only resist for a little while. And so I think Nighthawk just didn't mind that I was still contributing anyway. I want to do it. I want the platform to be here. I want it to thrive. That's really important. But that $5.95 a month, or the cup of coffee a month, gets you access to all of the archives from all the hosts and all the shows, which is really cool. It's sort of like a podcast, but you go there and grab it. It goes without saying, though, and we say this on every show, and that is we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. In Australia, this is the highest respect that you can give to anybody. And that is, where I live, it's the Darkinjung. That was the name of the people that lived where I live. Because Mecky and I we live like, 50 miles away from each other. So where he lives, it's the Guruk people. And we pay respects to elders, the elders of those tribes or mobs, past, present, and future. So that are yet to live. And let us remember that beneath our houses, the concrete, all of the roads and buildings are lands that have had stories passed down for 240,000 generations. This Western culture we have is really new. What, 7 generations or something, right? On these continents, you got to think about that. So I think they beat us by miles and miles and miles. So welcome to the last weekend of April 2018. It's not an important weekend for in any way, shape or form, but I'd like to announce something really cool. Today I wanted to have a round table. In Meki's absence, you know, I get to bounce ideas off his, and he has his point of view, and you know, we kick the, I don't know, we'd like kick it down the road for 2 hours. Now, we have a show topic usually, but you know what? We've run out of that show topic that we're talking about, which is Nazis and the occult. And I'd prefer to have a little excursion from that. I don't want Meki to be excluded. If he's not here, I don't want to talk about it really offhand. So what I thought today, I've been thinking a lot. I tried to invite a few people on who were all busy today. So that's, you know, a bit of a shame. But what I'm inviting everyone to do, please, if you can, is, you know, honestly, call in. I think I've solved all the call-in problems. So call into Studio A on Revolution Radio. And it should be forwarded to me. If you have any problems, message me in the chat room, and I will provide you with my direct call-in number. Because I'd love to be able to kick around some of the juicy news from the last week and get someone else's impression of it. Because, you know, I've certainly got my idea of the way everything's going and what the current events might be leading towards. I've got some nice things to talk about. Some government stuff. You know, Iran. Oh, something nice, some science to do with asteroids. What else? Oh, some more science to do with a binary twin, which is pretty cool. You'll like that when it comes up. I've got a story about the oldest spider. Have a think about how old you think the oldest spider on the planet is. It might surprise you. Or maybe even where it lives. I've got a news story about North Korea, or a topic to talk about with that. Also some DNA modification that scientists have been discussing this week. Also, maybe one of Australia's biggest step forwards as far as drug control is concerned. I think that's a good idea, and I'll get to that. Also, a very surprising revelation to do with human DNA. That's coming up. Also coming up as well is not just DNA, but there's it's sort of a science-y kind of side adjunct, I suppose you might call it, to the human DNA. And Meki and I have spoken about this so often it isn't funny. I think the only topic that beats that is monatomic elements and the double slit experiment. So that's another one. It's to do with telomerase, which I know Meki would absolutely love if he was here. So look, those topics are really cool. I'd love for people to call in. Can we please, or can I please, have some callers? And I'll talk about the Australian government's, while I'm talking about the Australian government's inability to conceive of the true problems facing us to do with climate change. All right, I'm going to talk about that. I'd love to have some callers call in, please. And hijack you if you're about. Buddy, call in. You're welcome. Everybody's welcome on my show. All right. Having said all of that, and I'm sure I don't have any dead air, and someone tell me in the chat room if there's dead air. That's very funny. I'm gonna write the word dead air on Studio A with a question mark, and hopefully people are in there and they're listening, because there's heaps of people in there today. I can see Olive, Easy P, UP1, Sandy. There's myself. Ro is in there from the last show. Amiga logos. There's tons. So thank you. And I just scroll up a little way there. All right. So the Australian government thanks ECP, and I really want someone to call in. Call in. That means I'm on air. I'm on air, and people can call in. So please call in. Now, pardon me, the Australian government have issued today a plan to save the Great Barrier Reef. Hang on. You mean the largest single life form, if you can call it that, which it's been named like that before, that you can see from space, and it's a single life form made of millions of single-cell creatures. Okay, so they plan to save the Great Barrier Reef. That's awesome. Okay, but why do they want to save it? Climate change. But aren't you the same government that closed down every one of the any kind of government department that had the word climate in its title? Oh yeah, that's what we closed down. Okay, so if you close them all down, do you believe or not believe in climate change? Oh, I see, but we're going to save the Great Barrier Reef. You didn't answer my question. Do you believe in climate change? Well, we've done what we can to climate. We've done what. Sorry, I'll put the other voice in. We've done what we can to curb climate change. You mean by shutting down all of the government departments with the word climate in it? Yes. What more can we do? Well, you could have actually attacked the actual climate. Oh, but no, those people were just telling me how bad it was. Now I don't hear any of that. It's hilarious. So the government just announced 500 million, which really isn't very much when you think about it, how much that would be. That'd be like a team of 40 people, maybe with, $10 million a year, possibly, for the person running it, maybe a brand new department or whatever it is. A quarter of the entire expense would be simply on management fees. And what's really going to happen, a couple of people are going to be in speedboats and collecting samples, and they'll build a building for about maybe half the cost of 500 million, and to do DNA testing, whether they can clone or create a coral which is hardier than the current coral. Why? Because climate change is affecting the coral to the point where the sea level has risen, reducing the ability for the coral to live at the depth they're now at. Does that make sense? So coral have only a very small zone in which they can live happily. Once the water gets too deep, or you tried to, say you broke a piece of coral off and moved it deeper, it would die. Yeah? So coral have a very shallow depth at which they can live. The water gets too deep, they can't live there anymore. But unfortunately, you can't just lift up the whole seabed, to make it shallower again. So this sort of, I'd have to say, I have to ask the question, okay, is this plan misguided? Because it seems to be that as though it might be. So they plan to spend 500 million Australian dollars or 370 million US dollars, same amount of money, just the conversion rate, to plan to rescue the Great Barrier Reef. It sounds good, but it is to breed coral that can defy the ravages of climate change. That's just so weird. Because Think about this. How high can the sea go? And the people have bandied numbers around. If the sea level rises due to climate change, I mean, how high is it going to get? Well, if you look around you, you'll see evidence that we live in the intermediate period between the lowest of the water level, which during the Ice Age, the previous Ice Age, which was caused by a meteor impact, and then we end up with this, once the meteor impact is significant enough, it blackens out the sun enough that we end up into an ice age, not like one, but we get one. So we have an ice age, right, after a meteor impact, and then it slowly thaws out, and it takes thousands of years, like 10,000 years, to get better. And then it's going to go up to the full height again of the once all of the glaciers have melted, and Antarctica, if it were to not be able to grow ice on the landmass, and that 2 miles of ice covering pretty much the continental USA of 2 miles of ice is released into the ocean, it would affect the tidal height of the ocean. That's a lot of water. You have to think about how that would affect everything. And if you look around, there's evidence everywhere. So look around at all of the low-lying areas near sea level, because those super flat areas near sea level were previously underwater. And where I live, there's tons of them. Tons and tons of areas of, thousands of square kilometres of land, which is around about 2 meters above sea level. Now, you've heard me mention this before, but that's the truth. And they were either tidal or intertidal zones. So they were in areas where the tide affected the shallow depth of those low-lying flat areas, because you need some place that's going to accumulate silt. And that's, if you have a look at the cross-section of those current low-lying areas, they were sedimentary. And that's unfortunately the way it goes. So you have a lot of rainfall, the low-lying areas heat up more, release more water into the atmosphere, and the cycle is actually pretty strong once it's in full swing of lots of low-lying ocean, which it's not the cold ocean floor of miles of ocean beneath the surface. It's only, maybe 1 or 2 meters deep at most. 1 meter, maybe. Anyway. So I ask, is the plan misguided? Should it be looking at the cause instead? Because, it seems to me that the position the government has taken, which doesn't match the public opinion of climate change, isn't real. Because the government is sort of portraying this position that they don't believe in climate change. They've, destroyed all the government departments that there were climate in it. And that's their public opinion. But maybe they already knew. And maybe I hate to say this, right? But maybe the government actually was right. There wasn't any need to do any more research because the science was solid. It's done. We don't have to know about it anymore. Because we all thought maybe the government put its head in the sand. Rather, I just see maybe they saw that as needless spending. I mean, who cares? We know it's what's going to happen. Why keep researching it now? So, maybe it means to me that they're only doing what they should already have been doing. Maybe they should have been looking at this a long time ago. Head in the sand. Or, or maybe they shouldn't have ignored it for so long. And I blame bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a terrible thing. It's good if it's going to prevent knee-jerk reactions, because by the time you've got a solution to something, the problem's long gone. However, in this case, where, bureaucracy's led for 30 years, to continue an argument against possible climate change, that the climate change now is so bad that if they had have acted back then, we might not have been where we're going to be. But I have to say, that question is also a moot point, because we're simply returning back to a time where there was no ice. That makes sense? Yeah, there's Sandy's put a good point out there, the fossilized palm trees under the Arctic ice. There's a lot of stuff out there that would show us that we don't live in a postcard. Someone hasn't just simply taken a postcard of the Earth and we're living in that postcard photo of an unchanging planet. Now, Meki would be arguing right now, because I know Meki, and he would be bringing up the point, not arguing with me, but bringing, a robust discussion. He'd be saying that this was cyclical. Oh, I believe that we have no ice, and then tons of ice, and then we have no ice, and then we have tons of ice. And we both agree that an asteroid impact is the cause of its icing over, of the planet going to ice. So this can be found in the geological record, and you can see when there's a meteor impact, because iridium is laid down, because that's either from the impactor itself containing tons and tons and tons of iridium, maybe 1 million ton asteroid, or it's because we know that in the Earth's crust there's a lot of iridium. It's not on the surface, not on the exact surface, but it's deep in the crust, and if that was to be impacted upon, that would eject a whole bunch of it. And that's what's laid down in the geological record, is a layer of iridium for each impact, each major one. So, we know the 65 million year ago one with the dinosaurs. Well, there was another one 35 million years ago, which they don't tend to talk about. And there was one about 12,000 years ago, which looks to have been the cause of the Great Flood, because the Great Flood wasn't just the biblical account or recount of the version of the flood, but the biblical one was more a survival story, yeah. However, none of it seems to make any sense at all. And if you want to talk fiction, talk about building an ark and having lions and antelope and zebras and elephants all on board for 40 days, their lions would be really full and there wouldn't be many creatures at the end of that journey. So I can't imagine building a boat that was so large it could take it all, unless it was DNA, unless they were sampled, unless giant spaceships came down and saved all of the creatures on the planet. Sounds less likely, doesn't it, that Noah built the boat? I'm only saying that. I'm not trying to get everyone upset. I just want you to think about it. Because the global flood, we did 7 shows on it, and we had recounted stories that have been passed down for generations from 12,000 years ago, from almost every single small village from around the planet, translated into English, handed down, and we read them out. Each one of these places had, pardon me, I've had such a bad tickle in my throat for the last 2 weeks, and I made it through last week's show, but I'm attempting to avoid coughing on air, but it's It's pretty tough, especially when I'm talking. Sitting here by myself, I'm still doing the same thing. And I wanted to thank Dr. Rowe for having a great show. I actually listened to it today and appreciate your work, buddy. Thank you very much. And you're welcome to call into my show if you're not too tired. And hi, Jackie, you too, buddy. And I'm making a call out again to everyone listening. You can call in, not if you're listening on YouTube, the show won't be on. But if you're in the chat room right now, please call in. And I don't care if you're the first time caller. Remember, I was a first time caller, and it was on Angela's show, This Blue Monkey. And I called in, and when I did, it changed my life. I was offered a show on Revolution Radio. And guess what? I took it on as a challenge, and I'm still here. And I really appreciate everybody. For those of you, for those hosts who couldn't make the show tonight, it's all good. I understand. And you've asked me, and I've had to decline too. So no, I get it. It's all good. Next, our Australian government is going absolutely bonkers. They announced today that they plan to provide permission for our three-letter agencies to hack the hackers that are hacking Australian resources. So, how do I put this best? If you're a hacker and you live within the border of Australia and its jurisdiction, that the Australian government is allowed to hack you if you're hacking. And that's pretty cool, right? I guess the debate was needed because it's truly, it brings up legal and ethical questions. Like, should you be able to hack the hacker that's hacking you? But actually, I don't think it's either of those, legal or ethical. I don't think the question needs to be asked. That's what I'm really saying here. But it is proven to work. I've seen evidence, and it was video evidence, with a commentary, by the way, as well, of black hat hackers hacking Nigerian spammers during their spam hack on them. So they were able to, the black hat hackers were able to, during the scam that was occurring right then, where the Nigerian person's PC was connected to their PC, and they were orchestrating, the Nigerian company was orchestrating some kind of hack on their computer. Well, so they thought. But it was actually a virtual machine that had no connection to anywhere at all except for the internet. And it had nothing on it, and it was irrelevant. But what it was, like a honeypot. So the black hat hacker allowed this person to connect to their computer, and all the while they were side hacking the hacker. Do you know, as soon as the screen launched and I'm watching this video of them hacking the hacker, I felt fantastic. That's like, taking out the bully in the schoolyard. Yay, you. Go you. Do it. What are you going to do? Delete the hard drive? Because that would have been awesome. But they didn't. They extracted as much data out of that machine as they could over the link that was possible. They took screenshots. The whole thing was videoed. Awesome. They got the person's identity, the location of them geographically on the planet, the actual street and the building number. They got all the phone details. They got everything. Not that anything could be done from the Nigerian government's perspective, because they just whitewash it. But what I saw was that they went and talked to those people and attempted to do a spam on them in Nigeria, which is extraordinarily dangerous and fraught with, it could be fatal. if you're caught. Anyway, I just thought that was tremendous. Good for you. But our government, maybe they just saw that video and went, hey, we can start doing that. Can't we do that? And someone said, no, they need approval. So what I like about this story, to be honest, besides me saying, I say go for it, Australian government, hack the hacker, what do I care? Okay, so the first question is, how do you become qualified to be on the list of hackers for them to hack you? I mean, is there a vetting process? Is it public? It's a public list. And how do you get off the list if you're incorrectly put on the list? And what can they hack from you? What's their jurisdiction? Is it everything? What is it? This is the same kind of thing you would imagine my audience in the US would appreciate. I think that's really important. But I think it's come at the right time. I think this talk about this has come at the right time because maybe the plan was created a long time ago. Maybe they've always wanted to hack the hackers, but public approval wouldn't do it. But now that the people would approve, because the position on maybe government intervention against hackers has changed, maybe, I don't know, maybe this plan has been resuscitated again. Because they've got a drawer full of plans, right? That they sit around, once a year making up, dreaming up plans against people and against things and for things and, And in the end of the meeting, they go, okay, so do you reckon this one would get up? And they just randomly lift up item number, 423, hacking the hackers. And they go, good luck with that. That's never going to get up. So they put that into the pile of, we have to wait for the right time to strike while the iron's hot. Okay. And this one, everyone must, I don't know, some ridiculous proposition, right? That's never going to get up. So they put that in the other pile of just wait for something to happen in the future where that might actually work. Because who knows? Maybe it hasn't even been invented yet. Everyone must marry a robot only once or something, right? Wait, that'll be a thing. So, but what's really weird about this hack the hacker is not the story about hacking the hackers, but how it came to the media, and it was that the plan to hack the hackers was leaked internally by a 3-letter agency person. So it actually looks like it's been made out that this plan was leaked to the press and the public were informed accidentally that they could have actually slipped this thing through Parliament without anyone knowing, and that would have been the end of that. Isn't that shocking? But that's actually code. When something's leaked to the press, that's just code for, we weren't really sure, this is government's voice, sorry, I'll put the government voice on, well, we weren't really sure whether, that was going to get up, so we pretended to leak it just to see what the public opinion would be, and if they don't care, then we'll release it into Parliament. That's the way it normally happens. It's like code, right? That's what it is. It's a code that we should all be completely aware of these days, and certainly it's all over the Westminster system, and it's been going on for as long as I've been alive, I know that. All right, another news story. How's this one? Iran threatens to sink US ships. Now this one was pretty big. I thought, oh, here we go. Iran's going to start a war. Going to be in the Middle East. It's going to start there, and then the proxy war will start because the US will strike Iran, and then who's Iran dealing oil with? China and Russia. And they don't want to see their oil partner get hit. So they're in a coalition of their own coalition, their own fighting force, and so then Russia and China will strike the US, and then there's poor countries like Australia who will do whatever the US does because we're in a partnership with you guys. So then we'll send our 4 planes over there to do something with a couple of laundry ships that we own, and a couple of submarines that you can hear across the horizon That's a joke, by the way. That's going to be our contribution anyway, and with some people on the ground. So, is the next war going to be Iran? Well, it's on that list. What's that? Wesley James? Oh, I forget his name. The military guy that says, 4 countries in 5 years. Is that what's going to happen? Is Iran the next one? Syria, Iran, North Korea? Install central banks in there and then it's all good. If we see that the only reason that that Syria is now off the table is that they've installed a central bank, then there's only 2 countries left that don't have one. And that's it. That's the end of that. But you see, what I found surprising after that was doing a bit of research and finding out that Russia's new S-300 advanced missile defense systems were installed in Syria. And they worked pretty well. But you know what? Israel has declared that it would destroy the anti-missile defense systems before they were online. That's why, that's why Israel was bombing targets in Syria. Now it seems to make sense. Why did the US start to throw missiles in there? Oh, because they were trying to cover their tracks on that fake gas attack. Wipe out all of... Because, maybe they got cut off and they couldn't go in. So we'll have to strike it. All right, let's do that. Any good targets? Yeah, we've got 2 of them. So are they high-value targets? No, but it'll prove a point. Yeah, all right, let's do that. It's funny that every government official, depending on whether the US or Australian, get the same voice, Yeah. But will Iran restart the nuclear program again? See, that's what the whole thing is about with Iran. That's the claim, see? The claim is all about whether Iran is going to honour the agreement or do what they've just announced in the media and said they're going to restart the nuclear program. Because the last one with Obama, when they said they're going to cease it, do you know how much it cost? Do you know how much it cost? It's crazy. It cost the US $1.8 billion in cash. Cash. They were taking planes full of cash over there in barrels. Look it up if you don't believe me. And that was to pay them to stop, apparently, says Obama. It's crazy. Once you start doing the research, you find out the world we live in is a crazy place with bribes going all over the place. And that's one of the things that Trump brought up this week, is that I can't believe the deal cost us $1.8 billion in cash. I think it was another $3 billion on top of that in deals. And while they haven't performed a nuclear test since, that's a lot of cash. Do you know that amount of cash would solve poverty in the US? There's always money for war, right? There's never money to end poverty. Wow. Do you know the whole Middle East thing is, I think it's off the charts. Would you be surprised if another war with another Middle Eastern country happened? Not given the American history with wars in the Middle East, no. Is that what we're looking at? Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, there's some good stuff in the chat room. I want to agree with you, Valerie, by the way. Yeah, so thank you. And how on earth did you remember my number? So if you're trying to call in and you don't know what the call-in number is, it's 347-688-2912. Oh, I've got a cough again. I'm going to see if I push the mute button first. You know when you have a cough and it's actually satisfying? Yeah, that's one I just had. So 347-688-2912 is the number to call in, and you can call in, and that's to my Skype, not even a station, and I'll pick that up on my Skype. Please do, and I do welcome all calls. So call in. I'd love to bandy some of these ideas. Just bounce them off you. See what you think, because it's your opinion is safe. It's an opinion. Okay, that's when I read out a story. I tell you the facts, and then I wrap maybe some research around it, and I provide that, and then I can tell you my opinion. So feel safe about that. All right, so we've got 15 minutes before the top of the hour. So 11 hours ago, something really interesting was released in the media, and then this is to do with the asteroid. So the headline read, "Earth will be hit by an asteroid," and I've gone, oh, here we go, clickbait. Nicely put, Valerie. Clickbait. Click here. Earth will be hit by an asteroid, and then the story's subheading is, "With 100% certainty, says space watching group B612. Ugh. All right, so the group of scientists and former astronauts is devoting its time to defending the planet from space apocalypse. Really? A bit melodramatic. I thought to myself, the Earth will be hit by a devastating asteroid capable of destroying all or most of life on the planet. Too many commas. Says a group of scientists of former astronauts. Okay. What's more, the Daily Star, here he gets better, it's 100% certainty that it's going to happen. Yeah, we all knew that already. Now, I haven't found any information in this story yet, except for the number B612. It's important. The warning comes from the B612 Foundation. And lest you conclude that these guys are a group of conspiracy theorists, thank you very much for that. You've just offended everybody that would be interested in this story. Or other wackadoodles. Oh, hang on. So conspiracy theorist or wackadoodles. I'm not sure what a wackadoodle is. I'm guessing crazy person. It sounds like it. But like whack-a-mole. It's a game. So what are they saying? It's saying, you know, if you're a conspiracy theorist, or maybe you like to play whack games. I don't know. I don't know what it means. But it says they're actually legitimate, and they're saying that the B612 Foundation is saying it's 100%. We're going to all die at one point. Duh. Right? I haven't said anything yet that I don't know, except for the B612. According to the group's website, they got a website, must be real. Because, you know, everything on the internet's real, right? Even that flat earth stuff, that's got to be real. That's even more real than everything else. Oh, yeah, I know, I said a wackadoodle. That's what was in the story. I'm not making this up. And I'm not talking about like a, you know, any private time someone might have. Their team consists of noted astronomers, engineers, and other scientific types who know what they're talking about. Gee, that makes it even better, doesn't it? They know what they're talking about. Who wrote this? Is that like is that like one of those you know, like Gen Techs who looked up from their mobile phone for 5 minutes and wrote the story? My goodness me. Oh, wackadoodles. Very funny. So they tried to legitimize it by calling out people's opinions of crazy peoples and conspiracy theorists. Yes, an eccentric or fanatic person, like fanatic, yes, right. An alarming number of wackadoodles predict the world will indeed end. But wait a minute, just fanatical? So, okay, so you're like the robot from Lost in Space. You're attempting to tell people that the world is going to end, and they're not listening, and so you become an alarmist. You're a wackadoodle. Hey, robot. Warning, warning, Will Robinson. Oh, you're just a wackadoodle. Shut up. Right, you're fanatical. Yeah, but I'm trying to save your life. My arms are flailing wildly. What? You doing what now? I'm just trying to sit here and relax, and you're telling me I'm going to die? What? I'm only telling you because... Thank you very much, EZP, for the info. I'm only trying to... I'm the robot, right? I'm just trying to tell Will Robinson he's going to die, and if he doesn't do something about it, he's going to die. So that makes it the robot alarmist, wackadoodle, crazy. I wonder, since I've read this story out, that B612 might just be the name of an asteroid, and that's hidden in the message. It is. Wow. It's called The Little Prince. The Little Prince, the secret meaning of B612. Wow. So B612 is the essence of the Turkish astronomer who discovered the asteroid. He wasn't taken seriously until he dressed in a Western fashion. B612 is a serious name. It reflects the boyish mind of St. Uxbury. No one can live on such a small planet. That's why they called it a boy, the Little Prince. Yet it has a scientific name for like grown up. La Petite Prince. That's what it means. Wow. It was discovered 10 years ago. I'm still reading through this. I'd have to go to the website. Valerie or EZP, would you mind jumping onto the website of the NASA trackers and see if you can find B612? As I don't know what its orbit is. Oh boy. Tracking killer asteroids, B612. Here we go. That's the B612 Foundation. In December 2004, astronomers in Arizona discovered an asteroid the size of a cruise ship that appeared to be on a collision course with Earth. Initial observations of the space rock known as Apophis. Hello. I'm absolutely right. Suggests that it has a very good chance of striking our planet in 2029. And then it goes on to say later measurements ruled that out. Yeah, because all it's going to do is swing by us. Swing by and keyhole for an impact April 13th, Friday, April 13th in 2036. And that's when it's going to hit. So, right. Now, doesn't it all make sense? I mean, everything makes sense when you do enough research. And that only took me 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5-minute research, and I found out the B612 Foundation named itself after Apophis, the asteroid, the killer asteroid that's going to kill us all. There you go. Isn't that awesome? I love that. I love what... You know what? That would have taken me a long time to research that before the internet. I think the internet is a wondrous place. It's difficult to... and sometimes to, sort the chaff from the wheat, like the husks from the actual seedy bit that you want. Because you don't want to eat the husk, right? It's just useless fiber. You should get enough fiber in your vegetables. I'm thinking about that. Wow. So this inane story that looks like it was written by, just anybody, is now has something about it. Absolutely programming people. Yeah, when the S hits the F, Sandy, yeah. So the programming has already taken place. When you have a look at Survivor Island, the only reason it's got celebrities in it and all those stupid games is because they're the games that you'll be wanting to play to while away the hours once you have a society re-established of a collection of people who are all what's the best way of putting it, misfits, who may not have been the desired group of people to join and make a community with. Those misfits will all have their own issues. We'll all remember it. We're at the right age, the right time, and it's not that far away now where this is going to become an issue, where we're going to need to remember how to farm, so learn how to farm, when to plant. You got to learn when to plant. What do you plant when? I don't know. You know, if it's in the Southern Hemisphere, I think everyone in the Southern Hemisphere is going to be pretty screwed. Northern Hemisphere, same deal. The crosswinds between the two, well, if it was truly in the Northern Hemisphere, like maybe the, oh, I see, pogroming, the pogroming people. Sorry, no, I thought it said programming. That's okay. It was like a typo, but it wasn't. Thank you, Sandy. This is the thing, is that Survivor Island, Naked and Afraid. Naked and Afraid doesn't have the same appeal as watching your favorite celebrity get into issues. And I think that the Survivor program wouldn't work as well and wouldn't have the greater appeal and reach a greater audience or a wider audience unless it had that kind of activity in it. Despite it being the worst part of the show is how people mingle and get on with each other. If I had to tell someone, if I was removed from this society and put into a place where all I could tell tales of was, when you leave one workplace and you go to another and you discover there's, a huge contrast between workplaces, and you regale people with stories about, I remember working this place where they did such and such. Well, that's cool. The horse hockey. Up one, you don't happen to be, the Colonel from MASH. Yeah. Or not. No. So you'll be able to, if I was taken out of this context today with all of our society and I had to regale people with stories about the way that our civilization carried on, the government issues would disappear straight away. The way that people treated people, hopefully in contrast to where I'd be going to, would be really important to tell people about how we got on with each other or didn't get on, and there was world conflicts and we had this and that, and no one agreed, and it wasn't like one currency across the whole planet, and people would laugh thinking that was hilarious because there's the top of the hour. Think about that, one world currency. Take a short break to jump in the chat room and push the donate button. I choose to subscribe to the archives. You should too. See you on the other side of the very short station break.
Are solely the opinions of the original source who express them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
There you go. Thank you very much, Easy P. Every time I say I'm muted, I am, or I'm not, and there you go. Thank you. You know what? You're back with David Mackey, Shiny Side Out on freedomsist.com on the number one listener supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives like I do. And I was just saying that I catch the train for an hour and a half in one direction to go to work, and I come home again. And guess what? Guess what I do when I'm on the train? I listen with my phone, with a pair of Bluetooth headphones, in the quiet carriage, and I love to listen to my other hosts, my friends. You know, I'm not going to be able to save myself from coughing, and I apologise. And I listen to my the other hosts on Revolution Radio while I'm on the train. I've got access to the archives, and I download them, put them on my phone, and I'm good to go. And you know what? It's great. And no, Sandy, it wasn't your fault. I had accidentally pressed it, and then I didn't unpress it. It's not even on the microphone. I've got a... If you don't know, I run a Blue Yeti microphone, and once you've got it all set up, it's fantastic, and to pick up on these things is tremendous. You can hear me breathe in, and I'm like 30 centimeters, maybe a foot away from the microphone. They're really good. And if you're a host on Revolution Radio, don't use a headset mic. Get yourself a Blue Yeti. They're really cheap. And I think it's like less than $200 US. They're USB as well, so they'll work on your laptop or work wherever you are. They've got some really cool settings on there, which allows, double-sided people talking from... You don't point the mic at you, by the way. It just sits there pointed upwards, and you talk into the side of the microphone. It's sort of like a Shure mic. But when we did all the testing, we found these to actually have a better response than the Shure mic. So, yeah, appreciated. What else? So I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have today. You know what? It really is interesting to have your opinions. If you reflect, you got fresh ears. So if you're hearing us talk about something you don't agree with, but you like all the other things we talk about, hey, give us your opinion. Email us. You can contact us on Facebook, whatever you want. If it's in YouTube, you can comment below. Please comment below. We appreciate it, and I will respond to every single comment. Don't be silly, but I do respond to them personally. I read each one of them and I respond to them. So I haven't heard from one guy there for a while. His name was the Reaver of Darkness. The Reaver of Darkness. I'd give him a shout out. He wasn't that bright. He kept telling me that the Funnelweb spider was harmless, and I invited him under his own money, of course, to come to Australia. And if he thought, not my opinion, if he thought that they're harmless, that I would video him allowing himself to be bitten, because it would be his wish to prove it, and then if he chose not to receive medical attention, I would have to force that upon him and allow him to receive medical attention to live through it. So what? That's crazy. That is so crazy that someone would even think that way. He goes, oh, but no one's died, man. No one died, yeah, because they sought medical attention. And the only reason people live through it is because since 2000 and whatever it was, 19, I forget the date now, but for a number of years now there's an antivenom, and if you've received the antivenom, you're okay. There was a child that died, so the Reaver of Darkness was incorrect, and shortly after posting all of his, his rant about the spider being harmless, a 2-year-old died who'd encountered one. And there's got to be sound on, eh? There really has to be. Surely there is. Maybe your browser needs to be reset. Hang on. Let me see if I can hear my own voice back. Yes, now there's an antivenom. And yep, there you go. So there is sound on, eh? Some people experience audio issues from time to time in the chat room. Reset your web page. All right, now, I just have to say to all the new people, glad you're on board. Contact us if you need to. and we'll get back to you, and I promise we will. We're halfway through show number 320, 020 and 300. That's the gap for Meki to say the numbers. He loves saying them like that. Unfortunately, Meki isn't with us. Just to recap, he's in the air, not on the line. He's in the air. He's flying about. He does that that's part of his job. Thanks very much, Easy P, and that's all because of my Yeti, my Blue Yeti microphone. Now, okay, so where was I? That's right, the last thing I talked about was a one world currency. Now, don't start to think that I'm a one world government advocate. I don't want the world we're in to change. I want the things that are wrong to change, the things that are bad where people are dying and, you know, and governments don't care about the people. I want that to change. I would wish I wish the Georgia Guidestones information wasn't real. I wish that the Earth could continue to live endlessly with peaceful tranquility, and that we didn't rape the planet. I would prefer that we didn't pollute the planet, that we had a conscience, that maybe just name, if you list in your own mind all the things that were wrong about the environment we live in. You know, money, that's not good. I like things. I like the car I've got. It's a really, really old car. Not super old. It's not like the American muscle car age of the 70s. I love the 70s in muscle cars. I like the design changes in the 80s. Well, most of them. Not all of them. Some. Okay, some. Okay, a few. Especially to do with American muscle cars. Because remember, I was going to school in California at Canyon High School back then in the 80s. And I did love that the student car park was bigger than the teacher's car park. That the student car park had IROC Z28s and Camaros, and it had Trans Ams. There was a Porsche. There was a whole bunch of really nice cars that we never saw in Australia. These are the cars that, you know, people had already decided and had a revolution against large fuel guzzlers. There is the term for it, where all of these big engine cars were frowned upon. And you remember, this is like when fuel was only 23 cents a gallon or something ridiculous. And we're ruining the planet. Well, yeah, we were, and we took lead out of the fuel, which helped a lot. I think it got our brains back on track again, because it is a cumulative drug. Lead is bad for you and settles in the soft tissue, which is your brain, and then you end up going truly mad. Anyway, lucky we got that out of the way. However, that fix was free. Didn't cost us anything, really. There was a slight change at the pump price, but really, you know, they changed refrigerants in fridges, not as good as the previous one, the ozone hole eating refrigerant, which was one of those oops that we had. But that was done for free. We took lead out of paint. That was free. Didn't cost us anything at all. But you start talking about, the coal thing. We keep burning coal, and that's actually bad. But who runs the planet? Big coal does, and big pharma, and it's really hard to get away from that. Like, renewables are great, but the people that want to spend the money on renewables aren't the people who are just digging the fuel up out of the ground and burning it, and we're buying it for a hugely expensive profit from their point of view, yeah? That's a shame. That's the hard part. The supply and stuff of electricity, I think that's really important. If you were trying to pitch electricity today, if we hadn't had power up until today and you had to pitch it, how do you think you'd go about that? You know, what's the first question that people would be asking? So how do you get this power to everyone? So you've got to put a telegraph pole in. What's a telegraph pole? It's the way of communicating between people, or power poles. All right, okay. So how often do these poles have to go in? Oh, like every 20 yards. Like, what? What are they going to be made out of? Trees. Right. So what do you want to grow a tree every 20 yards? No, we're going to cut down an existing tree and sort of just let it corrode in the ground and then have to get replaced every 30 years or something, right? I think 40 years. I don't know what the true length is. Right. Okay. So we've got a plan for renewal of the resource. Okay, that's okay. What about the wires? Copper. Really? What? Copper's one of the most expensive things on the planet now. We can't afford this rubbish. So so there's a pole every 20 yards and there's copper lining everything. Okay. What about the power? Oh, see, we're going to make the power. See, we're going to dig up black rock out of the ground. We call it coal. It's pretty cool. It doesn't cost that much per ton. But yeah, that's changing. And there's a couple of countries that are on the planet. Once we start digging up, they're going to want all of it. And it's going to mean the price goes up, and it's going to be actually quite expensive in the end. And what we're going to sort of plan is we're going to build these power stations, right, which are like just basically big steam engines. And we're going to burn the coal to boil the steam to move the turbine, which turns a generator, which generates electricity. Okay, so what's the time frame between getting the boiler up to speed? I see. We have problems. What we estimate they're going to be like there's going to be peak times, right, where people want to have more power, because once we do this, once we give power to everyone, they're going to have like devices in their house that are going to use power. Really? What could you possibly do? Oh, yeah, we'll invent it. Don't worry about that part. Could you imagine that? But we're going to build these power stations. We're just going to let them run for 60 years without upgrading anything, and then they're going to fall apart. And then at some point in the future, we're going to go, okay, well, the burning of coal's all right, but we might want to go nuclear, so we can just boil the water effortlessly with nuclear material because it gets really hot. See, the same thing. That discussion would go south on you. That discussion would end, and it wouldn't be favourable. It probably wouldn't get up. You'd never get this idea floated, right, of having to produce power and put these telegraph poles everywhere. And you go, we can dig them, we can put them underground. What happens if someone just happens to be digging there and they hit the wires? Well, they're going to die. Really? What? What happens if one of these telegraph poles falls over in a wind, right, and the wires are on the ground? Does it, like, it automatically turns off the power or something, right? No, it doesn't do that. No, people just wander over and start touching. Then what happens? Oh, they die. All right, okay. But we've got like a bunch of creatures that like to climb up trees and poles and things. And what happens if they touch one of the wires? Oh, see, nothing. Oh, that's good. Oh, but unless they touch two of the wires, and then they're going to die. Oh, okay. So that's another thing that's wrong. Okay. I can only see that going in the wrong direction. Right now, we've got a planet, right? And I don't hate power. Power's great. We need it. And this whole station, everything, the way you're hearing me, your lithium-ion batteries in your phones, fantastic technology. I'm glad electricity exists, and thank you to Volta. Thank you. It's like an Emmy Award, like the Academy Awards. I'd like to thank Tesla. Thank you, Tesla, and that other guy, the guy that invented DC, that hated Tesla for his AC. I'd like to thank that guy too, but not so much, because I don't think his attitude was right. This is hilarious, right? So this is where we are right now. We're at a point where we should be transitioning, and I think the transition should be a reasonably easy one. If the companies that are doing the coal start to transition to renewables. And no one talks about tidal power. Or see how I'm bringing that back to one of the other stories? Tidal power is seemingly effortless. You don't want to use a power of a like the Earth's ocean conveyor. That would be bad. Because if you put any resistance on that sucker, that could go away, and then it's, it's bad for everybody. Northern Hemisphere would just like freeze over, and good luck with that. However, tidal, the moon's causing that. That's all right. It's unlikely that's going to affect the moon's orbit. And I see that as being probably the most renewable. Wind is great, but it's let's call it seasonal. It can or cannot happen. It can happen from different directions, and its intensity changes. And if you start to put large resistance blocks up in front of it, how does that affect the people downwind of that? Does that actually affect people? I don't know if the study's been done, but I'd say yes. Even though there's 2 miles of air above it, which is still moving, there would have to have, well, a minimum, still an effect in some way. So you can have hydro, where water change elevation through your turbine. That's pretty good as long as you have a constant water source. Or you can pump water for cheaper than you can allow it to go through your turbine, or use some kind of power amplification system. See, power amplification is probably the way that we can best solve it. And I came up with the idea on the train because physics suggests that a moment arm, if anyone knows what on earth I'm talking about, message me in the chat room, because I understand what I'm saying. The moment arm is the length of leverage that you have in able to rotate something, yeah, or provide resistance to a rotation. Say like a spanner on a bolt that's rusted in. A very short spanner would mean you've got to have an extraordinary amount of force to move it at all, to turn it. But a spanner with a really long arm on it, where you could be 2 meters away, you would provide far less, and it's calculable, but far less effort to be able to rotate that difficult to rotate nut on the bolt. So I figured that if you had a reasonably low powered input to rotate a very long moment arm, where a very short moment arm is the generator on the inside of the same wheel, you can use less power to generate more power. Because the less power is just the effort that's current. It all makes sense. In my head, that seems to make perfect sense that we could have already been doing this. But, since I've set it on air, it's live now. Good luck with that. It's out there. I think that's the solution. I think using permanent magnets, but shielding them in such a way that you only use the one pole, is the way to do it. And like we were able to produce moving pictures on the screen by blocking when the frame is not fully in place. Does that make sense? So if you know how a motion picture camera projector works, the frame sits there and isn't constantly moving past an open aperture, where the aperture only reveals that stationary frame for the moment that it's stationary in place. Otherwise, it conceals the movement of the next frame into place until then it's revealed to the light to be projected. That is the way that we should be concealing and revealing the magnetic energy from a single pole permanent magnet environment. Otherwise, you would be using the other side of that equation is your pulsed magnetic long moment arm device. So you're not having to supply both sides of it, which reduces your load, your power input. Oh, see, look, it all makes sense. And it is seriously seriously the way to do it. It just makes total sense to me, and I don't know why anyone hasn't done it. So if you've got any way of being able to contact me in the chat room or by email, please do. It's dave@shinysideout.net. Do that, or .com.au, it doesn't matter, either one. All right, so look, back to science. And I was talking about the one world currency earlier. I think I covered that off. I just expect, imagine if we were aliens and we turned up at a planet that was all over the place, that didn't have, I don't know, like a cosmic representative governance. Does it make sense? Like a council or something of governance that counseled the planet when we turned up. Who do you talk to? Like, can I talk to the boss? Well, I don't know. There's like 100 countries. So who are you going to talk to? I don't know. Who's the most powerful one? Oh, well, I wouldn't talk to them because they're like, you know, you're talking to a nice person on the street, right? And they go, oh, probably don't want to talk to the one who's leading the country because they're like warlike, right? And you go, well, who's the most pacifist? Well, they oddly enough, they're the least populated country because everyone loves war in this country. You just move on. You'd move on to another planet. You wouldn't want to talk to these bastards, right? And I reckon that's why the UN put someone in place as the cosmic liaison. Liaison. Do you like that? Je m'appelle David. Comment allez-vous? I don't speak French. I studied French in school and I was terrible at it. I'm getting better now though. So my French teacher would be rolling in her grave, spinning like, 9,000 RPM redlining, to know that I've finally, maybe she'd relax like she's idling now or something. I don't know. Poor lady. I gave her such a hard time. And then him such a hard time because they changed teachers. Guess what's happening in space? I'm going to go to a news story. In space, there is, we've heard that, the stars have a binary, they're in binary state with two stars. And if they're really lucky, they were both around about the same size. That would sustain them for a much longer period. And if they're in an orbit sufficiently far away from each other, where one of them only visits the other one every once in a while, that would be even better. Because if one's significantly bigger than the other, but they're in a tight orbit, then the smaller one will continually erode until it was gone, revealing only maybe iron or something, whatever was left. And it would pop because there'd be no downward pressure from the material. The gravity would basically cease on the star and it would burst. Well, they've actually found that. So there's a story out this week about NASA's Hubble telescope detected that one of the stars in a binary twin, which the twin had supernovaed 17 years ago and was also witnessed on Earth. It was seen by telescopes. It was something that happened in the sky, and they were able to record the after effects of it, which is pretty cool. But now, 17 years later, they didn't know, but that star had a binary twin. I shouldn't say binary. It had a twin. It was in a binary star system. And they didn't know because they couldn't see the other one until now. And now it's actually, you could say, hoovering up the debris from the supernova, from its twin. If you like hoovering, I don't know, in Australia we call it's still vacuuming. You vacuum. You don't like glad wrap something. It's the name of the action, not the aim of the company's product. So that we prefer, I suppose, to use. I don't know. It's very strange. When I lived in America, there was a lot of comments where it was the brand name rather than the product type. It's very confusing. So anyway, so that's what they found. They found a star that's sucking up all the debris from the dead twin. Now, what that's going to mean in the end is because it went supernova, then there's going to be a black hole eventually that will eventually catch up and collide with the other star, probably consuming it from the inside in a nasty, nasty, nasty explosion. But the gas cloud is now so enormous that it's visible from Earth, and that we can see that the material is starting to disappear. It's been eaten up. Anyway, I just thought that was really cool. We think about them doing that while they're alive and one consuming the other until the other one is gone, not the other way around. So, anyway, I thought it's interesting. The spider story. Now, this one's really cool. So at the top of the show, I named all these different topics I was going to talk about. One of these is the oldest spider in the world. Now, I asked you if you could think about, maybe have a guess as to how old the oldest spider was on the planet. And it's surprisingly old. Not astonishingly old, just surprisingly old. Think about this. The story says the oldest spider in the world was a spider that had lived for 28 years. But this current spider, 43 years old it was, and lived in Western Australia. The trapdoor spider lived in Western Australia's central wheat belt and outlived its previous rival, who had lived for 28 years. That's extraordinary. 43 years. So there was a team studying spiders in the wild, and they'd were looking for just how old do these spiders live for? I don't know. We've had one in the backyard here for 10 years. It's a massive, massive hole. I'm not talking like bird spider or anything. This is just the equivalent of Australian tarantula, but it's not a tarantula because I don't think we have the species that does it looks the same, but it's a ground-dwelling spider, and it comes out it's nocturnal, so it comes out at night hunting. It can lay in wait for surprise. Usually, this thing's so big you'd probably get a mouse. Extraordinary. If you don't know it, I've got a YouTube brand of mine called Things in My Yard. So if you're ever interested to see the things that I've discovered in my own personal yard, then go ahead and have a look. I know people that live in places that have nothing. They're either in Denver or something, and there's really nothing. They got some rocks. Some friends in Vegas, they have nothing. They live on the outskirts, and they have a snake every once in a while, and it's really hot, but they don't. I mean, I live in the bush, so I've got everything. Just you name it. It's crazy. And for all those people in the US who think that, or are surprised that Australians live to adulthood because of the amount of dangers, I've got bare feet now, and when I'm out in my yard, I'm just in bare feet. Unless I'm using, powered machinery, then I'll suit up in safety equipment because the machinery is dangerous. But, as long as you make sufficient amount of noise and you go about your business in the bush, you're usually safe because they don't want to be around you as much as you don't want them to be around you. So making enough noise usually gets them to scurry away. However, if you've upset them because they became surprised that suddenly you're standing on them, or likewise, then it's pretty much over for you. The things that can become surprised are usually fatally venomous. So, and we only do have two types of creatures. They're either harmless or they're deadly, according to every expert. Doesn't seem to be any mid-range stuff out there. And when visitors come around, it's always very funny, and they go, "Oh, the huntsman on the wall, that's harmless, isn't it?" And it's like, not a dinner plate, but it's one of those bread roll plate size spiders. It's been hiding behind a painting on the wall or something like that, behind the curtains, and it just darts out and it's on the wall and you go, whee! Can be quite surprising. And it's even more surprising when it's hiding because you had your windows open in your car, just parked out in the front, and it's climbed in your car and got between the head, the visor and the ceiling of your car. And when you go to move that, it gets surprised too, I suspect, and falls into your lap. And this is a big spider, as big as your hand, right? That can be a big surprise too. So anyway, moving on. I couldn't do today's show without mentioning North Korea, because North Korea and South Korea leaders met this week to speak for the first time since before 1953. That's how long it's been. It's been quite a while. Bit of conflict there. Didn't sort of like what was going on with each other. Demilitarized zone, big bit between them. They sort of met there, and the summit began with its official crossing of the DMZ, and they started talking in what's called the Peace House on the southern side of the DMZ. And I think that's an historic moment. Historic moment of the, we all thought, hands up those who thought in January that the North Korean peninsula was going to be destroyed so that South Korea became an island. Right? It'd be surrounded by water, it'd be bombed so much it'd go, below sea level. That's the impression the media gave us. That's all the worry that we'd been led up to believe. And now I think this is a better place than we were at least 6 months ago or 4 months ago now, right? That's good. Really appreciate it. Thank you, whoever set that up, whoever decided that now is a good time to do it. Maybe they heard from Group B612. Maybe it's time to put our weapons down and say, you know what, screw this. If we all want to get along, I think we're going to have to survive this catastrophe in 2036. Let's wait for then. And if anyone wants to argue about 2036 or the possibility of the end of the planet, good luck with you then. If you want to stick your head in the sand, good luck with you. I think what we should do is gather all of those people up and shoot them in a rocket to the sun. That should fix that. Then we can all go about our peace again, right? Let's get back to peace and live and see who can survive on this godforsaken rock past 2036. Because, mark my words, that's the only reason Elon Musk is interested in getting us off this planet by 2023 and sending us to Mars. To establish a base and get it underway and get everything set up so they can survive here. That's it. You're right. 18 years ain't that long. You better get busy, says Easy P in the chat room. Now, I didn't have to clean it up. Good on you, Easy P. Right. So, what I ask about North Korea, because I've got some questions. I don't believe everything the media says. Yes, they did the walk and they did the chat. Yay, history's been made. So, got to ask, is this deal only for TV? Is it real? Is it at all real? You've got to question it. And if you say, yes, Dave, it's real, I go, yeah, cool, it's real. Was it only for TV? Was it only for the media? Is this just, how do the others live? Have you ever had a bad neighbour and you decided one day you're going to go around and talk to them in their house? You take up their invitation and go around and they're just, no way would you go back again. If they meet outside of the demilitarized zone, if Kim Jong-un decides he's going to, drive across the border and, maybe they have, their families over for dinner or something, that's different. How do you think that would have been viewed from the North Korean side? This big tough man that wants to separate himself from the world and suddenly talking to someone. You what? Don't know. How's that capitalism going to work for you and all your people? Are you going to let them earn money finally? I don't know. You going to feed them? Do they get food now? I don't know how that's going to end. I don't know what it's for. If this is the beginning to open up the borders, because that's the first thing you do, is go, you know what? We're going to be cool. We're going to be cool now. We can open up the borders, and you can have whatever you want. And everyone can go wherever they want. Who would stay? There'd be no one to support the government. There'd be no taxes, right? So you have to understand this transition wouldn't be in the next year, where they've suddenly turned on, the westernized system and allowed activity and trade with everybody. Unless they're trade poor right now and they've got nothing. Or maybe they're sitting on, the world's largest lithium deposit, and this is all about doing that. Or maybe this deal is about installing a centralized bank in North Korea, for what it's worth, for the $2 that their people have to rub together. I don't know. So the story is basically North Korea to dismantle its nuclear test site in May. That's it. So if they're going to do that, and they're going to change the world so much by dismantling its nuclear test site, then maybe it's just going to take it underground. Isn't that what everyone else does? That's the question. Pardon me. So that's how much I question everything. I don't just question the headline or the details. I question the motive. I question why. And you got to do the same thing. You really need to do it. Do it for yourself. But don't worry about any of it, because your life won't change. Even if all this happens, who cares? Never worry about it, because the worry will do you in. I'm going to tell you that right here, right now. Don't ever worry about anything. And if you do happen to find yourself wandering down that worry path, create a plan. Make the plan. Because when you have a plan, then it takes the worry out of the action. I'm not talking about anything bad, right? I'm just saying, like I live in a bushfire area, and if a bushfire started, what's my plan? If I don't have a plan, I'm just going to walk around in circles worrying about it. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, we're going to die. Okay, that's one option, right? Option 2 is, okay, well, we collect the family together and the pets we want to keep alive. Because the chickens aren't all going to go in the car. Trust me on that. They just poop where they're standing. They even poop when they're eating in their food. Ugh. But the eggs are good. So what are you going to do? So you have a plan. Okay, if we're separated, the plan is we're going to meet up at this location. Cool. How long should we expect to wait for if the other person doesn't, arrive? Okay, you make contact, find out what you can do. Is the mobile phones working? If there's a fire, you take we have handheld CB radios. I would Amiga logos. Good on you. Says North Korea is sitting on 6 trillion in mineral resources. Well, I completely believe that too. And now obviously that's where it's all about. So yeah, having a plan stops the fear and allows you to think normal thoughts and get on with life. So you should do that, and I absolutely recommend it. Here's another one, and this is scientists on the verge of creating hybrid elephant/mammoth creatures in an attempt to try to bring back the mammoth. See, this all started with, finding Meki's favourite discussion, the buttercup in the mouth of the baby mammoth found in the Arctic Circle. So a buttercup, it was warm enough for buttercups to grow there. They're not really a tundra plant. They're really not. So, but it had one. And so the freezing of the mammoths and the thawing out and the discovery of them has been a boon to the DNA playful, and they're attempting to be able to bring one back. And you have to ask yourself, how do you feel about people playing with DNA? Because I'll read the story. It says, Professor George Church, the world-renowned geneticist and his team have spent the past 11 years recreating the DNA blueprint of the extinct mammoth and are finally ready to release 4 papers setting out their research. Hang on, this has been going for 11 years. Wow. The DNA from mammoths preserved in Arctic permafrost, they have found 44 genes that carry traits separating them from elephants, such as shaggy coat and antifreeze blood, which allowed them to survive the Ice Age. Antifreeze blood? What? Okay, so they've got antifreeze blood and a shaggy coat, but they're still elephants, right? They're hoping to save endangered elephants as well as the extinct mammoth by creating more hardy mammoth hybrids that can live further north than the existing elephants can, the ones that are endangered, like the Asian elephant, for instance. They also plan to insert non-mammoth genes, which would prevent the animals growing tusks. Obviously, the poaching part of their existence would be eliminated. Remember, stop fear, make a plan. As well as new DNA to allow them to eat a wider diet. What? Yeah, Easy P, I believe you. Jurassic Park. That was one of my first thoughts as soon as I heard that they were intending to change the DNA to allow them to eat a wider range of diet and stop them growing tusks. What? They can do that now? Is what I thought. That was what I thought. Can they do it now? I mean, really? Okay, well, they sound like they can do it. So, then do it. The Simpsons has a really funny scene with Dr. Marvin Monroe before he was axed from the show. And he says, trying to get money from Mr. Burns. He proposed his experiment, which would be to grow a child in the lab. And his only hypothesis was that the child would harbour a deep resentment against him when he grew up. So that's funny, right? And I have to say that if you're going to start playing, let's use the term that everyone else is going to use, playing God. If you're going to start playing God with DNA and creating whatever you want, haven't we just become the gods? Haven't we? Aren't we now intervening somewhere? If we made this creature, right, and, the 2036 thing wiped most of humans out, and it took us another 12,000 years to get to where we are today with, flat screens and, I love my flat screens, and the internet and, laptops and mobile phones and you name it, everything. If we got back to this level of civilization and we had DNA testing and we got back to DNA and then we discovered, hang on a minute, those elephants that we thought were elephants seem to have been mixed at this date because of fossil records from 2 different creatures, the Asian elephant and the extinct mammoth. Hang on a second, that doesn't make sense. So when we look back in time and we see that ancient hominids had 48 chromosomes, right? Which is 24 base pairs. And modern humans only have 23 base pairs, which is 46 chromosomes, right? 48 is the old ones, and 46 is the new ones. An intervention happened at that point. Someone did something. And I reckon, my personal belief, that it wasn't us. We didn't do it. Someone else had done it. And that someone else is still up for grabs, but, biblically, they believe that we were created in their image. The Sumerians have a very similar picture. We were created in the image of the Anunnaki. And I wouldn't like to guess whether it was the Anunnaki or gods, but at least someone did it. That it was done. I'll agree on that part. I don't know who did it. I mean, Sumerians have the most accurate description of what happened in those days, and I'll probably go with that because it was first-hand account. However, that's the question. That someone did it. Now, someone in the future would question how this elephant came to be, right? Where there was no fossil records, and suddenly there is, and it's got a different DNA. It doesn't seem to match. It looks like these two things, like it was created. You've got to think about that. How would it appear to someone in the future? Not us, because we know, but some other people. Now, this story is pretty cool. I've only got 2 more stories left. This one's pretty cool. And I hope you're enjoying the show too, by the way. Bringing some context in the world. This is the first time ever that Australia has decided to agree on drug testing at festivals. Okay, so the drugs themselves are illegal, can't have them, but you know what, if you test it and it turns out to be a good one, you can take it. What? That's crazy talk. I'm not an advocate for drugs, right? And I don't disapprove of them. But I've just got to say, well, isn't it like a duality? Isn't it? Where the country says the drugs are bad for you, you're not allowed to have them, plus they're illegal. If you're caught with them, you're going to jail. But we've got a tent at the festival where if you sneak in you queue, there's got to be a queue, right? There'll be a queue of like 300 people there that have drugs on themselves that have bought it once they've got into the festival because they're being filtered. So who's selling those drugs? I don't know. Maybe the big pharma has people in there doing it. But however the people got the drugs inside the festival, they can now test them legally to make sure they're safe, to make sure the drugs they're getting finally, right, from the 60s, isn't this, right? Outcry. That you don't want your offspring, whoever they are, not the offspring, but your offspring, you don't want your offspring to suffer if they happen to make the choice to take a drug that's illegal and to be able to taste it. Now, I actually think that that's really cool. In the 90s, they had a program called, in this country, I think it was Rave Safe. But this one now is called Grooven, right? It's Australia's first pill testing trial at Grooven the Moo is the name of the festival. Canberra has begun, with some festival goers saying that they are glad the service is available and they plan to visit the stall. Advocates for pill testing are under the media ban and unable to comment on the trial while it's underway. But the dozens of attendees at the ABC approached all said they supported the trial. And there's a quote, "It's definitely necessary in this day and age because people are going to take it. They need to know that what they're taking is safe, and then they have the decision whether they want to take it or not," one man said. And someone else said it won't make a difference of who's doing it. It just makes a difference of whether people are going to die of it, says another attendee. And look, that's really important. I think it's the powerful message. You don't want your children to die at a music festival because they took something that was wrong, that was bad. Not the wrong part. No, I'll delete the wrong part. Can we have that stricken from the record? Take the wrong part out. If they make a choice to take it, I'd prefer that they took something that was safe. And that's probably why Big Pharma should be involved in making safe drugs for everybody, and it should become legal. And it should be monitored and controlled, and there should be taxes, and that's the way I'm not an advocate for the drugs themselves, but just that there shouldn't be backyard people making stuff in conditions that aren't safe. Let's put it that way. I'm not talking about ice and anything. I'm talking about the drugs that would be classified as party drugs. Okay, last one. This will take us to the top of the show. In human cells, this is the big one too, by the way. In human cells, scientists find DNA that looks like a twisted knot instead of a double helix. And I'm going to paste this link into the chat room so you can all see it. Very important that you do. So please check this one out. For the first time, scientists have detected a DNA structure inside living human cells that looks more like a 4-stranded knot than the elegant double helix we know from biology textbooks. Wow. There's actually a picture of it in there as well. And they're talking about the end of aging and cancer. There's another story here that's sort of relevant to the DNA component. And the scientists unveil structure of the immortality enzyme telomerase. Really? It says a new discovery related to our DNA is raising hopes we could soon slow aging and cure cancer. Scientists say, well, I have to tell you morons, that it was discovered in 2009. So that's almost 10 years ago, right? 9 years ago now. Making a drug is like trying to pick a lock at the molecular level, says the person. There are 2 ways which you can proceed. You can try thousands of different keys at random, hopefully finding one that fits. The pharmaceutical industry does this all the time, sometimes screening hundreds of thousands of compounds to see if they interact with a certain enzyme or protein. But unfortunately, it's not always efficient. There are more drug molecule shapes than seconds have passed since the beginning of the universe. Alternatively, like a safe cracker, you can x-ray the lock you want to open and work out probable shape of the key, the pictures you get, blah, blah, blah. Then you can sort of manufacture something to match it. Every organism packages its DNA into chromosomes. In simple bacteria like E. coli, this is a single small circle. Most more complex organisms have far more complicated DNA and multiple linear chromosomes. Blah, blah, blah. It just goes on. What it's saying is a tangled shape known as an eye motif had been seen before in the lab, but no one thought it could occur in human cells until now. Maybe this is a modification. Maybe this is the only reason that they've found it recently. Who knows? Our imaging suggests that this is a normal thing that happens, said Marcel Dinger, a molecular biologist at Garvan Institute for Medical Research in Sydney. Yay, another Aussie, yay. And a senior author of the new work published recently in Nature Chemistry. Wow. So this eye motif is very important. Yeah, I completely... The Akribo message, yeah. I see how that can be likened. There is the top of the hour. Can't believe 2 hours has gone past. Already there's some music. I hope that you join Jer Bear in his roundtable and continue this wonderful thing we have called Revolution Radio. Take care, everyone. See you next week. By the way, it's been a pleasure.